Now, South Africa's water supply infrastructure needs a massive overhaul in the wake of recent water shortages in and outside Gauteng. Analysts forecast that government needs to spend a whopping 239 billion rand over the next 5 years. Otherwise, South Africa faces a looming water crisis. This is 100 times more than the 2.9 billion the department is expected to spend on water infrastructure management. We have invited Marius Claassen, an aquatic ecologist from the Center for Scientific Institute and Research, to discuss this further. Good evening, Mr. Claassen, and thank you so much for joining us. Now, first things first, is South Africa facing a water shortage crisis?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. No, definitely not. We certainly have enough water at this very moment, and we're probably going to have enough water in the foreseeable future. And in your introduction, I agree with you that our challenge actually lies in maintaining and building infrastructure to reliably deliver that water to the end users. And that's also the kind of challenges that was displayed in the Johannesburg shortages just recently.
Now, what form of intervention needs to be put in place to avert such a situation?
Yeah, obviously there's a number of interventions, and the one is, of course, the building of sufficient new infrastructure. Of course, we continue to urbanize, we continue to increase our water needs, and we need to continue to build new infrastructure to supply that. And examples of this would be the Lesotho Highlands scheme, and we're just going on to the next phase of that. Water transfer schemes to move water from areas where we've got abundance of water to areas where we've got less water, and also schemes in terms of water treatment. So that's just in terms of new infrastructure. But at the same time, we need to ensure that the infrastructure that we already have is sufficiently maintained so that it can reliably provide those services. And I think the numbers that you've quoted particularly rate or focus on maintenance and of our existing infrastructure.
Now, are there any examples that we can maybe learn from developed nations that we can implement?
No, definitely. I think there's a number of layers in the system that we need to understand and make sure that it functions properly. The one is the infrastructure itself, and that's the part that we've been focusing on. But this infrastructure is actually being operated in a government system, a system of governance, which is a partnership not just by the government department, but also the private sector. And we need to make sure that the capacity in that system is sufficient to make sensible decisions and also to execute those decisions. So it's not just about the hardware, not just about the pipes and the taps, but also the governance system that sits behind that provides the resources, that makes the decisions and implements those.
Now, let's look at methods such as subsistence collecting of rainwater. Would these work in South Africa?
Most definitely, and they quite appropriate for areas that are far removed from our main infrastructure systems, and they can work quite efficiently at the local level. And most definitely, we are at the moment implementing those systems in some of those areas that are not connected to the distribution systems.
Now, you touched on the fact that this sort of method would work in, far distance areas, sort of rural areas. In terms of this sort of situations and those places, would then government play a bigger role with regards to municipalities coming into play and doing their part to ensure that every South African has access to clean water?
Absolutely. And if we look at what we've done, what we've achieved over the last 20 years, it's really commendable in terms of being able to provide services to people. And I think just from 2002 until now, we've increased water supply from 85% of our population being served with clean drinking water to 90% of people being served with clean drinking water. But from 2005 until now, people's levels of happiness with the service that they receive, so the quality of the service that they received have declined. In 2005, about 76% of people were actually quite happy with the services that they receive. And last year, when we did the same survey, only 63% of people were happy with the service. So we're extending the delivery, but we're actually reducing the quality of the service. And I think the challenge lies in increasing both of those. So it's not just increasing the distribution, but making sure that those distribution systems are reliable.
Now, let's look at the issue of so to speak, the alarmists who claim that South Africa is looking or running at a shortage of water or is facing a water crisis in the country. Why such, alarmist remarks, and why such a situation? Why are they creating such a situation, or sort of it seems like an uninformed information that is being put out there to the public?
Yeah, I'm afraid that is the case, and let me answer that from a few perspectives. The one statistic, if I can put it that way, that's been shared with the media over the last 2 or 3 years has been that 98% of our water resources in the country has already been allocated for use. Now, if you just look at that on face value, people can get really worried to say that we've actually almost used up all of our water. Now, the problem is that 98% is the water that has been allocated for particular uses. That is not the amount of water that is currently used. So that is kind of the wrong interpretation of that piece of information. So starting at that point. The second issue is that our current usage of water is in actual fact just wasteful. If I use our municipalities as an example, as an average for our country, municipalities, about a third of the water that municipalities actually get in is lost before it gets to the end user. And that's through leakages and wastages and other systems before it actually even gets to the end user. So a third of our water is just wasted in the system before it actually even gets used. So firstly, there's misinformation in the sense that it's just allocated for use and not actually being used. And secondly, we have very low efficiency of use. And the third issue is just if we look at the numbers, I mean, all of our dams at this point in time is about between 80 and 90% full. And for most of the country, this is actually at the end of our dry season. So if you just look at those numbers, you'd say, I don't think we're running out of water. We are facing some challenges in terms of delivery of that water to end users, but we are also facing some challenges in terms of water quality. And I mean, I think a lot of the recent information that's come out around the impact on our water resources from mining, from urban areas, from agriculture, from all of our activities is really making quite a big impact on our water resources. And I think while the water may be available for use, it is not at a very good quality. And that is really a concern, and most definitely we need to look at managing our impacts on our water resources more carefully to ensure that water is in actual fact usable. But we are not running out of water.
Marius, thank you so much for joining us. That was Marius Claassen, an ecologist from the Center for Scientific Institute and Research. Time now to take a quick break. More news coming up when we return. Stay with us.